Hello, and welcome to Look Up Tonight. This is the cable show of the Orange County Astronomers, and the OCA is one of the largest, if not the largest, local astronomy club in the USA, with nearly 900 members. This show is one of our ways we try to spread the astronomy bug, hopefully, to you. We're now producing 2 of these shows per month, and tonight's show features our What's Up presentation, where you get to learn all about the cool and interesting stuff that you can see in the night skies. This What's Up presentation is from the January 2004 meeting of the OCA held at Chapman University. And as usual, OCA member Chris Butler is our What's Up presenter, and without further ado, here is Chris.
Just so you know, if you guys had a tough Christmas, I'll give you just at least a little information on what happened with me, just so you'll appreciate this. You know, my computer died, right? I had to buy a new computer, and the new computer died, and they had to ship me a new computer, right? Which meant that I couldn't work, and then a certain little princess got sick, so we couldn't work, and Tracy and I had to stay at home with her. And then everybody got better, ready for the holidays. December 23rd, kidney stones nailed me. So I dealt with that, and antibiotics gave me intestinal bleeding. I'm still dealing with all of these things, which is why I'm carrying a pack full of Vicodin, folks. And if the talk gets a little bit slow this evening, I'll just pass them out, okay? That stuff is wonderful. So I'll rocket through the talk this evening and stumble on out of here, but we do indeed have a real talk, largely because Tracy was kind enough to support me in doing this. Thank you. Next picture, please. Let's launch on into what's going on with the planets here. Next picture, please. This was, do you know what that is? Yeah, that's your favorite thing. That's the moon, right? Yes, she's confirming all of these as we go. She, in fact, suggested this shot. We shot this outside. Diana pointed up and said, "Moon?" And I looked and go, "Hey, that's a good shot." So I went ahead and got that one. That's really her doing there. As far as what's going on with the moon, we had a full moon here recently, but just to take a pulse of what's going on with the moon, next picture, please. These are the moon phases. January 7th was our full moon right now. The moon is rising later and later and is now approaching last quarter in a couple days here. If you want to watch what's going on with the planets here, this is looking directly at the sun. This chart shows where Mercury and Venus are. They're on opposite sides of the sun. Mercury is visible in the morning sky in the pre-dawn hours and is a good bet. Best at January 17th is its widest separation from the sun. So you can look for it in the morning if you're up. Venus is now very, very obvious. Brilliant object in the west. And is, in fact, although not technically a star, a certain someone has noticed it and says, "Star," and points at it. So it's the evening star. That's technically close. Next picture, please. So a lot of you have probably seen it. It looks an awful lot like this. Note for the, do we have any bachelors in the room? Come on. That's only because they're scared. This is like a model railroaders convention in here, okay? A lot of lonely guys. Here's your shot, folks. You got a bright and easy thing to find in the West. What do you do when you get the girls outside? You say, "What is that?" Next picture, please. What you do is you say, "This is the goddess of love," okay? If you guys are out there 2 in the morning staring at the Lackanucky Nebula, do not blame me. I tried to help you. Next picture, please. This little body seems to have gotten an awful lot of attention. Those of you who are high-powered telescope observers, you know that it is far away from us right now. It is small. It does not look like much, but it is indeed up in the early evening skies. It is up until 11:43 p.m. mid-month. It is a tiny little thing, won't look like much in a scope. Next picture, please. If you did get a good look at it, this is the phase of Mars you're looking at now with a good bite taken out of the side. It is, however, only twice the size of Uranus in a telescope, okay? This is a long, long way away. Obviously, though, you can see it with your eyes. It's noteworthy, of course, because, next picture, wow. That is the only Mars I have ever seen that is as flat as all the places at JPL where they practice with their rovers. I always thought they were cheating, but they actually found a spot they can drive on. So this is going to work out great. And it's very encouraging because all of you who know space exploration know that recently what we've made on Mars, next picture please, are craters. Okay, we've been very good at doing this. Now, for the college students in the back, this is not a real picture. I'm just pulling your leg. But it is encouraging, and we're going to have an awful lot of fun with Mars. Next picture, please. Looking at something else here, little Timmy with his telescope he got for Christmas. What does he want to see? Of course, Saturn. Boy, we're lucky. It was closest and highest at midnight, December 31st. It is beautifully placed over the next several months in the constellation of Gemini. A word or two about that. If you know Gemini, if you want to watch Saturn up there, it's easily visible to the unaided eye. Again, highest, 11 o'clock and then eventually 10 o'clock. It just gets more and more convenient as the months go by. Next picture, please. If you watch what Saturn's actually doing, the ancients were terrified by this kind of behavior. The wandering stars, which is what planets mean, as they go around the sun, they crawl around here, and they sometimes hesitate, slow down, back up, slow down again, and get back to it. Now, what's actually going on is not mysterious. Everyone's driving the same way on the freeway around the sun. We're all still moving the same way. It's when we pass one of the planets on the outside track, our motion momentarily overwhelms it, and it looks like it goes backwards. But oh boy, did this give people heartburn back in the old times when they're trying to figure out what's going on. The fun thing is for you right now, Saturn is going backwards. It's in the middle of its backwards motion in Gemini. You learn the constellation and you watch where Saturn is. Watch, out about in March, it will slow down as it proceeds to the west in the sky, and then will slowly resume its crawl through the remainder of the year. You may notice another hiccup there farther to your left. That's when we pass it next year. So they back up and back up and back up and do this retrograde motion over and over again. Next picture, please. The rings are fully open, 24 hours a day. They are wide open to us right now. They are beautiful. This is a lot like what you'll see with the telescope, or more to the point, this is what the guy who sold you the telescope said Saturn would look like when you looked through it. It is small, but hey, it's real, right? We can't argue with that. It is magnificent. High power view will be a little blurrier than this, but indeed this orientation is correct. And there's more to look at with Saturn than just the rings. Next picture, please. Of course, we also have those moons. She's running comment. Hi, sweetheart. She's saying, Daddy, 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 and pointing at me. Daddy's making a fool of himself. All of these moons here are within range of amateur telescopes. However, Titan, which you may see at upper right, is by far the brightest. And even Timmy's little department store telescope will show you Titan going around Saturn every 16 odd days. Because the rings and Saturn's equator tilted towards us, the moons don't go back and forth in a straight line. They can never go behind Saturn. You're looking down on the racetrack as they all go around in roughly circular orbits. So this is the kind of motion you can see from them. An 8-inch telescope will probably show you about 5 or 6 of these. Next picture, please. Later in the night, Jupiter is just down to the south of Leo slightly. It is much brighter than Saturn is. Can't mistake it. Right in the middle of this month, it'll be up at 9:14. Its highest, though, all the way at 3 in the morning, which is to say Jupiter, for your perfectionists, will really be closest to us in March. That's when it's at its best. But you can certainly see it all out there rising in the east right now. Next picture, please. Jupiter there, it's got the little specks of stars next to it. This, again, a fake picture. All of mine are fake, folks. I can't shoot the real ones. I'm not good enough. But you can see the giant moons that are out there orbiting the planet and the cloud belts. It looks like a big Easter egg, and that's appropriate because it'll be highest right around Easter. Next picture, please. One thing about looking at it now, though, if you're a perfectionist, because we're not exactly lined up with it, we're looking at Jupiter as slightly sideways as much as we can, and that gives you a chance to really see eclipses of the moons, which is to say, here we see the giant moon Ganymede behind Jupiter, moving in the direction of the arrow, which is not visible in the real sky, And as it crawls over that way, it's actually just starting to go into Jupiter's shadow. But because we're not lined up with the sun, the shadow actually goes back off to the side, off to the right. Next picture, please. On this particular occasion, Ganymede actually emerges from eclipse without having gone behind Jupiter yet. The shadow is tilted that far off to the side right now. So if you'd like to see these weird things going on, this month is a good time. A computer program like the one I used here, Starry Night, can tell you when these things are going to happen. Next picture, please. Another thing in the news, folks, comet Wild 2, which looks like Wild 2 when written, but apparently German. This is great because I love watching the scientists go insane trying to explain what looks like impact craters when they said there shouldn't be any. It's a lot of fun to watch academics get surprised, especially on television. Now this actually, just for a sense of scale, everything's relative, what's big, what's small. In the case of this, it is very small as planets go. This little comet, not a spectacle in the sky, probably not going to look at with a telescope, but I wanted to give you a concrete example just for scale. Next picture, please. That's against the city of Orange, okay? So I don't know, maybe that seems really small to you, maybe that seems really large, that it would tuck in between the 55, 57, and 22. I don't know. I can say that it would take approximately, well, at 60 miles an hour, well, actually on the 55, it would take 4 hours to cross it, okay? Now, that's a relative judgment of how large it seems to all of us. By comparison, next picture, please, the kidney stone I passed was the size of the state of Nebraska. But that's a relative judgment, all right? Next picture, please. And there are no impact craters on that one. Next picture, please. Looking at the sky right now, just the stars. We should do a word or two about the stars. The heavens right now, magnificent later in the evening. All of the winter stars are up. Next picture, please. Let's put some lines out there, which really, really help. The 3 stars in a row marking the belt of Orion, we just down and to the right of them, or down to the left, pardon me, we have the brightest of all the nighttime stars. Sirius is up there. The Pleiades star clusters, all kinds of brilliant stars at this time of year. I'm going to direct your attention to a place you're going anyway, which is to say a close pair of bright stars just to the left of center. These are the twins of Gemini. You're going to be there anyway. Why? Because Saturn is there. And if you want to go in and have a look at Gemini, next picture please. This shows what a naked eye view of Gemini looks like right now. The 2 objects at the top are stars, the lead stars, Castor and Pollux of the constellation of Gemini. The additional bright object is Saturn. But we're not here to talk about Saturn, but the stars of Gemini. So next picture, please. We simply obliterate the planet. This is what the star names are. There are lots of weird and exciting ones out there. In addition to Castor and Pollux, you have mind-bending names like Mechbuddha and Mebsuta, and my favorite, Wazat, which my daughter has described, because she goes, Wazat, Wazat, Wazat. That's what that is. I'm up here dying, folks. These are a wonderful collection of stars, and you may be thinking, especially if you're in Intro to Astronomy class, that the 2 bright stars at the top are actually the brightest. Far from it, folks. This is an interesting collection of not just stars, they're suns, really, and if this was a fair contest, and you brought these stars to the same distance from us, so you could really see how bright they are, next picture, please, that's what they would look like. That's the honest brightness, which is to say good old Mebsuta back there would be as bright as Venus at this same standard measuring distance that astronomers use. You may have noticed the 2 guys at the top, Castor and Pollux, didn't change much. Why? By stupid luck, they do reside at the standard measuring distance. Approximately, Castor is actually brighter than Pollux, but it's farther away, so it looks fainter in our sky. So all of these stars have their own interesting characters. Castor in particular gets a lot of attention. It's a noted double star. In fact, it's a noted multiple stars. We'll show you in a moment. Next picture, please. I was able to dig up a lot of pictures of Castor on the web, paintings by some hack showing the stars of the Castor system. and a very confusing Japanese diagram at the top, which has just got all kinds of stuff going on, and they threw galaxies all around the picture, and their writing is worse than mine. I can't read a thing on that. But suffice it to say, you see two stars in your telescope. There are two small pictures there shot by amateurs from here. You can see them as a binary. In truth, each of those is actually two suns going around each other very, very close. So you see in that painting by that guy, you can see there, we're in that system. You can see that they're actually a pair. And then at a distance, there's a faint pair of stars going around each other. It's a sextuple star system, 6 sunrises every morning. Now, while I was searching for pictures of Castor, talking about getting a sense of where things really are, I found a picture of Castor. Next picture, please. Apparently Castor is in the... It's a real picture, folks. Apparently Castor was throwing the clank. So I don't know if it's actually there tonight or whatever. Maybe it's on a release program or something. But that's what Castor looks like up close. Next picture, please. I wonder what he was in for. As far as star objects to look at besides stars, Gemini has a wonderful assortment of different things. All the things in yellow are star clusters, pictures of one to follow. The thing in green, the Eskimo Nebula, is a wonderful thing to look at. And then in purple, we have an object called IC443, which I don't see very often. It's invisible to the eye, but good for photographers. Now, my favorite object in the whole constellation, right at the feet, those are the two bodies of the twins. If you go down to Castor's foot, you'll see M35. That is a beautiful star cluster. You can even see it in binoculars. So we have an object that's well suited even for beginners. And for that matter, for people who want to look at it very closely, you can get a great look at another star cluster, NGC 2158, actually behind it in the distance. The Eskimo, you need a telescope for, and that's good for the average amateur, and bright and pretty easy to find. And then IC443 for the folks who are out there getting divorced because of the big telescope they bought. Next picture, please. Real photograph of M35 there. M35 is that huge mass of stars all the way in the upper left. It is so big and so bright, you look at it with a telescope, you don't know you're looking at a star cluster. You pan across it and the stars just get great for a while. And then you keep moving and then it's just like, wow, there are less stars over here. You almost need binoculars to even know you're looking at a star cluster. This thing's gorgeous. And notice the colored members. There's some yellow stars. Down in the bottom, 10,000 odd light years away, much farther away, is the spectacular star cluster 2158. In Buena Park, M35 is okay, and the other one does not exist, okay? But in the desert, you can see both. Next picture, please. The Eskimo is well worth your time. It does look like an Eskimo wearing a fur parka if that Eskimo has a spectacular skin disorder. Or is being slowly frozen or something, right? It's named, of course, for that. It's also been called the Clown Face Nebula. If clowns look like that, that's why kids are scared of clowns. Okay? This is a gas shell being blown off by a dying star. I always say it's a star not that blew up, but threw up. That's what's going on. The star is still there in the center, but to your eyes, it doesn't look like that Hubble Space Telescope picture, the big one. It looks more like it does at upper right there. It's kind of a ghostly green glowing soft shell of gas. Very pretty green color from oxygen atoms that emit light in a way your eyes see well. Now, someone with more imagination than me drew the middle little sketch there. Supposedly through the Mount Wilson 60-inch. Yeah, right, I'm sure. They're just drawing this stuff in their room. But no, that is kind of what it might look like. And then to give you an idea, well, you guys saw the stuff. I'm cool with this. Oh, wow, that's dramatic. I don't care. I'm on Vicodin. You guys are all my friends. I love you. Look at that weird-looking diagram down at the bottom. That's what astronomers think it would really look like if you could see it and move around it. It's not a bubble like you'd think. It's a ring around the equator of a star, and it's blowing stuff up the top and the bottom at you. So you're looking face down at a very weird-looking thing. Anyway, the Eskimo is a wonderful treat. For our last treat here, next picture, please. IC443, supernova remnant. This is a huge shell of gas from a star that did properly blew up, expanding out into space, ghostly, faint, impossible to detect with eyes. As far as I know, maybe not, maybe there's some guys with a heavy artillery have gotten the ghostly edge of the brighter part of it here. Certainly good target for photography. It's down in the feet of Gemini as well. So next picture, please. We have got a wonderful, wonderful part of the sky right now with the winter Milky Way, all these great constellations. You've got Saturn, you've got Jupiter, you have got Orion, all these wonderful things. You've even got a real what's up through all of this mess. I've persevered. So next picture, please. I hope you all enjoy getting out and doing a little stargazing. Thank you very much.
Talk about dedication to the job. Kidney stones. Ouch! It comes to something when even kidney stones could not keep our Chris Butler from doing the What's Up. What a guy. Thanks, Chris. We all appreciate your extraordinary effort you do to bring us your wonderful What's Up presentation. Now, the #1 goal of this TV program is to try to get people like you to get out there and view the night skies, especially through a telescope. Now, if you don't have a telescope of your own, please do check out our website for details on some of the public outreach events we have where you might be able to come along and take a look through our members' telescopes. We also have star parties every month at one of the club's observing sites in Orange County and also at our observatory near the town of Anza, which is about 30 miles east of Temecula. If you'd like to attend one of these events, please do send an email to lookuptonight@ocastronomers.org. There are actually many other places in the area where you can experience astronomy. Here's a short report on location from the Griffith Observatory Satellite in LA that's free and open to the public. Hello, I'm here at the Griffith Observatory Satellite, which is adjacent to the Los Angeles Zoo. This is the temporary home for the Griffith Observatory while the historic buildings remain closed for their extensive renovation lasting through 2005. The satellite facility is open to the public and it's always completely free. Inside the building, you'll find a small exhibit hall containing, among other things, a fine collection of meteorites and a giant 6-foot moon globe. Of particular interest will be the special and revolutionary computerized mini planetarium, which seats about 50 people at a time. The planetarium presenters can take the audience on a fully realistic tour of the night sky, including animations of the planets, their moons, comets, asteroids, and many other astronomical events. I happen to know this planetarium pretty intimately because I'm one of the Griffith Observatory lecturers trained on this system. It's well worth a visit. In addition to the realistic planetarium shows, you can also experience real astronomy. As weather permitting, every night except Monday, a telescope is set up outside from 7 p.m. until 9:45 p.m., where the public can view real stuff. For instance, right now the public are enjoying breathtaking views of the planet Saturn and even the Orion Nebula. Do check out the opening times of the Griffith Observatory Satellite on the web or call for further information. Come on down and look up tonight, right here. Now, time for an interlude. It looks like we have time enough for a short video presentation produced by the astronomers at the Certif Science Center of Caltech JPL. The astronomers there often get interesting questions from the public, and this is the answer to one of those questions. Enjoy.
Ask an Astronomer. Why is Certif painted black?
Infrared instruments need to be very cold to operate properly, so it may surprise you that an infrared telescope is painted black. Actually, the new Space Infrared Telescope Facility, or Certif, is painted two colors. The side that faces the sun is painted a reflective silver, while the side that faces away from the sun is painted black. The reflective side reflects the sun's heat, allowing the telescope to cool itself down to almost absolute zero. This allows us to see the infrared sky without any interference. But if you've ever been in a black car on a hot day, then you know that black objects absorb more heat than white objects. So why paint half of the observatory black? Well, in addition to being a good absorber of heat, black is also a good radiator of heat. That means that black objects don't store heat as well as their white counterparts. They give off their heat more easily to the surrounding space. By painting the side that faces away from the sun black, it allows the telescope to radiate away any heat that it generates or absorbs. So the black side is actually helping the telescope cool down. For Ask an Astronomer, I'm Dr. Michelle Thaller at the Certif Science Center.
Thanks so much to the Certif Science Center for another interesting answer. That is almost the end of our show for tonight. But before we leave you, I wanted to let you know a little bit about our next show. As you know, this is the first 30-minute show this month, and the next show contains highlights from our main presentation at our January 2004 meeting. That presentation features the incredible photography of OCA member Wally Pacholka. Wally shares details of his astrophotography techniques. But we'll end the show with some photos from Wally's presentation, along with some other recent member astrophotos. I'm Liam Kennedy with the Orange County Astronomers. Now, get out there and look up tonight. Hello and welcome to Look Up Tonight. This is the cable show of the Orange County Astronomers. The OCA is one of the largest, if not the largest, local astronomy club in the USA, with nearly 900 members. And this show is one of our ways we try to spread the astronomy bug, hopefully to you. Tonight's show features OCA member Wally Pacholka, who shares with us the techniques he uses to produce some of the most stunning astrophotographs you will ever see. Here is Wally Pacholka.
Thank you very much for having me here. Actually, I'm very humbled to be here. I'm very honored to be here. I wouldn't say I'm a real accomplished astrophotographer. I know there's just so many people here within the club here and the subgroup, the Astro Imagers, that are much more accomplished camera technicians than I am. I've been taking pictures for some 30 years, but frankly I haven't advanced too far. I started 30 years ago with this camera set up, and this is still what I shoot with today, almost exclusively. Over 98% of the images that I take, and all of the images that you'll see here tonight, were taken with a camera set up like this. Basic 35 millimeter camera, standard 50 millimeter lens. And that's what I like to shoot with, mainly because the standard lens gives you what the human eye sees. And I like to, I love the night sky. I've loved it ever since I was a kid. And I like to be able to take home with me and show family and friends the night sky as it really is. And the best way to capture that is just with a standard 50 millimeter lens. So let's go on here. As I mentioned here, this is a picture of an area very similar to where I grew up outside of Montreal, Canada. It's a lake out in the forest. I've been a star lover ever since I was a kid. I got into photography to answer my parents and friends' constant question. So what do you do out there in the mountains or desert anyway? And, or what do you see out there? So ever since then, I basically forced my basic astrophotography to answer that basic question. Now when people ask, I can say, well, this is what I saw last night. And as this photograph shows here, you could see the Gemini twins, Castor and Pollux, rising over the mountain ridge, and you could also see them reflected in the lake. Or I could say, come home and say, well, hey, this is what I saw last night. I saw Orion rising over the ridge. It's a little bit cloudy last night, but that's okay. The clouds kind of added to the view. Or I can come home and say, well, I went and saw the Perseid meteor shower at Joshua Tree National Park. And this is just one of many meteors I saw. Or famous comet Hale-Bopp, which was visible to the naked eye for more than 12 months. Visible for every country in the world. Over 80% of the world saw this comet. This is an image from Joshua Tree National Park. Or I can come home and say, well, hey, I saw the moon rise last night in Nevada, or the Milky Way in Sequoia National Park, or the Milky Way in Nevada desert. Or Mars, as we all know, it made its closest approach to Earth in 50,000 years. Here's a view of Mars through Arch Rock a couple of months before its closest approach. A month later as it got closer. And here on the night of closest approach. I probably took about 3,000 images of Mars. I've traveled to over 12 national parks. My intent was basically to shoot Mars from a place that looked like Mars. And this is one of the places I found. It's a fantastic park. It's called Valley of Fire State Park. It's about 60 miles northeast of Las Vegas. And we'll see more images from this park. Okay, my goal tonight is to point out a few techniques that will help anyone with a basic camera to take great shots of events in the night sky. And that's what I like to do. I like to shoot events. I like to shoot the meteor showers. I like to shoot comets. I like to shoot Mars or the moon. So come with me and let me show you the beauty of the night sky and how you can capture it with surprisingly simple equipment and technique. My basic equipment, as I just pointed out to you, is a standard 35 millimeter camera. The make really doesn't matter. The important thing with the camera is to use it on a manual mode. And actually the older cameras are better. They don't have all the sophistication. The sophistication actually gets in the way for simple astrophotography. I use a standard 50 millimeter lens, and again the reason for that is I want to capture images that look like what I saw the previous night. Okay? I don't want to zoom in. I just want to get the natural view. Of course you need a tripod, a cable reed. That's the little thing here that locks down the exposure because you need to take a time exposure, and I'll get into that in a minute. I use Fuji 800 film. You could use many films, but this is a fast, fine-grained film, and I use it. It's available at Target, 4 rolls for $10, so it's very, very inexpensive. And I also use a flashlight. And the reason I use a flashlight, as you can see in this photograph here, I would be in the dark there, but someone is lighting me up with a flashlight or with a flash fill. And since I like to capture the scenery in images, not just the celestial object or the celestial event, I like to capture the surrounding scenery. Because when you walk out there in the desert, you not only see the constellations up in the sky, but you can actually see the desert. The human eye is amazingly versatile. So I like my images to pick up both of those items, the night sky as well as the scenery. Camera settings, again, are very simple and almost self-explanatory. You focus at infinity, the stars are really far. Okay, so that's an easy one. Okay, there's only three things you need to adjust. Okay, focus on infinity, the lens wide open. Of course, you want as many stars as possible, so you want to let in as much light as possible. So you set the camera lens wide open. That's usually around f2. It might be f 1.4. And exposure at 30 seconds. Some cameras have a 30-second timer. Most don't. Those that don't usually have what's called a bulb setting. And that's, I set it on bulb, and that just means time exposure setting. And the camera will stay open as long as you push the button. But you really don't want to push the button. You want to have a cable release that holds down the shutter for 30 seconds. Now the key, why 30 seconds? A lot of people ask me that. Well, if you go longer than 30 seconds, you're going to get star streaks, okay? And it's simply because of the Earth's rotation. As we all know, it's if you were to drive a car and head in one direction and travel around the world, it'd be 25,000 miles. So you divide that by 24 hours, that's 1,000 miles an hour. So the Earth is actually spinning very, very fast. So your exposure has to be less than 30 seconds if you want the stars as points. And of course, since you want your picture to be realistic, you want the stars to be points and not streaks. Okay, and then again, use the flashlight on the foreground to light up the foreground. Because this shot here, the comet, would be an interesting image of the comet, but it's much more interesting and dramatic if you have the foreground in there also. Okay, so basic planning. My camera technique is basically the same for most of the objects that I shoot, whether it's a constellation, meteor, comet, the moon, or planet. But you need to do different planning if you want to shoot different objects, and I'll get into that. And pick a location with good foreground scenery. That's probably the number one point. It's kind of like the real estate 3 rules of real estate: location, location, location. If you're shooting from a good location, you're going to get good results. This image, by the way, it's just 10, 15 miles from here. It's Corona del Mar, Little Corona del Mar, sometimes people call it. If you go Pacific Coast Highway and see the Crowned Restaurant, and just turn on that street, and you'll run into the ocean, and you can walk down and get this site. It's a great, one of my favorite local places. Okay, my basic style, as I kind of already hinted, was capture the whole scene, include the celestial event, whatever it is, a meteor, comet, or a constellation, but also include the local foreground scenery. Okay, we're going to get into the how-to here, how to shoot different objects. Okay, how to shoot constellations. Of course, constellations are out every night, and so it's a fairly easy target. And the title of my talk here is how to shoot astrophotos that get published. But even if you're not interested in getting published, of course, who would not want to get something published? But even if you're not interested in that, wouldn't it be nice to be able to go out and take some photos of some of your favorite constellations and hang them on your wall at home or hang them on your wall in your office? And that's what we're going to show you how to do tonight. Okay, if you want to shoot a constellation like Orion, okay, pick a location with interesting foreground scenery where the constellation is near the horizon. Okay, because in other words, you want to include the constellation. You want to include scenery along with the constellation. So you have to do a little planning. You have to know when Orion is going to be rising. Okay, and you could do that by becoming familiar with the sky yourself, or you could use a program like Starry Nights that will basically replicates the sky as it actually will appear each night, and you put in the time or what direction you're facing, and it'll tell you. But if you just go out and look at the sky from night after night, you get familiar pretty much with when things are rising. Okay, and now in your photograph, a little trick I use, I try to get 2/3 sky and about 1/3 of Earth in the frame, or 1/3 scenery. It just kind of has a better composition that way. Okay, this is an image without scenery, and I'm just doing this just to show you how it looks. This picture, obviously, the Big Dipper and a meteor going through it. And of course, many people would say, "Well, boy, I'd love to get a picture of the Big Dipper with a meteor." And it's nice to have, but it's not anywhere near as nice than if you included some type of scenery in the shot. Okay, now let me just go over how I took this shot. Okay, I basically camera on a tripod. Of course, I picked out beforehand the location. I like red rock, and half my images here, or more than half, you see a lot of red rock. I think it just shows up good in the photograph. So I often go to places like Joshua Tree or Red Rock Canyon or the Valley of Fire to find the red rock and include those in my images. So I basically figured out what time when the Big Dipper would be over the horizon, because the Big Dipper spins around the sky. It's at the 6 o'clock position here. 6 hours later it'll be at the 3 o'clock position, and 12 hours later it'll be basically almost overhead. In 24 hours it'll be back exactly where it is again. So again, you have to kind of figure out where the constellation is going to be and when it's going to be over the rock formation. Okay. So once you figure that out, you go out there at that time, you point the camera to the Big Dipper, you include the foreground scenery, you hit the cable release, the camera is now taking an image. 30 seconds on Fujifilm, lens wide open, you'll pick up every star you can see with the naked eye. Okay, now during that time, you hit the cable release, you're not doing anything. So what I do at that point, basically I take out a flashlight, and this flashlight I use is very small, and I just light up the rock, just like that. I just basically paint the rock. And it depends on how far the rock is as to how long I paint the rock. And usually I try to get rocks that are at least that far away, because if they're any closer, they'll be out of focus. And if the rocks are really far, I might have a flashlight in each pocket, and I might use two flashlights. Okay, you don't always need a flashlight. Sometimes just a silhouette works out very well. Again, you're still getting the scenery here. You get your gist that you're in the forest, and this is how the Big Dipper looked last night from Hume Lake in Sequoia National Park. By the way, sometimes I use a star filter. It's this little filter you still screw on the front of the camera, and it'll basically put a little star or twinkling effect on the brightest stars, and it'll make the constellation stand out a little bit from the other stars. So that's just a little trick. This is the Big Dipper over a very unusual rock formation. It's called Elephant Rock, of course. It looks like an elephant. It's an amazing formation in that if you walk over on the other side of it, it still looks like an elephant on the other side. It's quite an amazing feature. Okay, here's the constellation Orion through Window Arch in Arches National Park. Again, I had to time things right to get Orion just as it was rising through this window. Actually, I got there a little late. Orion's not quite dead centered, but it's still worked out. Again, just to review how I took this photograph, got Orion, went there at the time when Orion was visible through the arch, focused at infinity, pointed the camera at Orion, and was tried to get back far enough so that the rocks were not out of focus. Hit the cable release for 30 seconds. During that exposure time, took out my flashlight and flashed the rocks, basically painting it to be able to include those in the scenery. A little bit later, the previous shot was I took a picture through the window, the arch on the bottom, and then I waited some time and got a picture of Orion as it rose above the arch. Actually, I should have waited probably another 5 minutes. I missed one of the stars in the constellation. I was able to see it up here, but my camera was down here, so I missed the bottom star. But again, the same approach, waiting for the constellation to be above the rock, taking a 30-second exposure. During that 30-second exposure, using a flashlight. In this case, the rocks were pretty far away, so I probably used 2 flashlights to paint the rock. This here is a unusual formation in Arches National Park. It's called Double Arch. It's basically a cave. I'm looking straight overhead here. The camera's pointing straight up. It's very unusual. I'm sure eons ago people actually lived in that cave and they had a room with, or a window with a view, I guess you might say. Okay, shooting meteors. Okay, the camera technique is basically the same, but you need to plan differently, obviously. You can't go out any night like you can shooting constellations. Okay, so anyhow, you choose a night when there's a meteor shower because your chances are greater. And as I say in the bottom, just repeat, repeat, repeat. I mean, it's just, you have to take a lot of shots. But even this shot here without a meteor is still a great shot. Okay? You know, it's still nice to be able to put up on your wall at home or up in the office. This is my very first meteor shot. It was 1997. And I think it was Konica film. It was a very, very fast film, 3200. But it's a very, very grainy. Here's another shot. I got this the same time period. This Perseid meteor. It's just a tiny, tiny meteor. But this was published, mainly not because the meteor is so good, but just because, you know, the scenery, even nowadays, the scenery is not the greatest. But it just shows you that just having some scenery there does add. This is a shot from a couple years ago. It's one of my favorites, Perseid meteor over Joshua Tree National Park. The rock formation on the right, I have that rock formation in many of my photos. I end up going to the same place all the time because there's good... the scenery is good there. So a lot of my photos, you'll see the same rock formations. Like the rock formation on the right looks like a hand. And you'll see that in a number of my photos. Okay. This is a great Leonid meteor storm in 2001. That's obviously the Pleiades. I really like this shot. That's traveling through about 70 miles of atmosphere there. Again, all of these, I shot hundreds and hundreds of images, no meteors. Okay, sometimes if you point your camera north, you could take exposures longer than 30 seconds. In other words, even though the stars streak here, they still have a pattern to them. I'm looking north with the North Star that's kind of in the center there. And so you can get some interesting shots by pointing north, and you can take much longer exposures. You don't have to shoot as much film that way. Okay, again, this is another shot shooting north. And there's actually 4 meteors in here. I don't know if you can see them, but this is 2 Lyrid meteors and 2 sporadic. Here's one here, sporadic. You can tell the Lyrids, this one and this one are parallel. So you could tell if they're coming from that shower. But there's one here and another one, very faint one here. But in any case, this was in 5 minutes. I got 4 meters. This is very, very rare. Okay, shooting comets. Again, the camera technique is pretty much the same, but obviously you have to go out when there's a comet and a bright comet. And same thing, you pick a location with interesting foreground scenery and shoot a 30-second exposure and light up the foreground. It's the technique's the same. And but once you know that technique, you can take pictures of almost anything you can see with the naked eye. And this again is comet Hale-Bopp, a fabulous comet, very, very brilliant, even in the city. But from the dark location, it was just something to behold. And here it is the night of closest approach, and it was still 120 million miles away. If it was as close as comet Hyakutake that came the year previously, it would have filled the sky and been, 10 times brighter than the full moon. It would have been just an incredible comet. Or was an incredible comet, but it would have been an incredible sight if it was as close as that other comet. This again is Hale-Bopp. You can't miss it, really. Just 2 beautiful tails. And again, this is just 35 millimeter camera on a tripod. Okay, now this is going back in time 1 year. This is comet Hyakutake, a Japanese comet, or discoverer. And Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay. 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 This is for me. This is a turning point picture. Okay. Prior to this, I never used the lighting technique, but I was taking this picture of Comet Hyakutake, and next to me was a whole bunch of Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts, and they had this big bonfire going, and it lit up the rocks. And I kind of thought it was a big nuisance while I was out there. And anyhow, when I got it developed, I said, wow, this kind of looks neat. Not only am I seeing the comet, but I could see some of the surroundings. And I like that. Okay, shooting the moon. We're back to the Corona del Mar shot. The moon can be an easy object almost any night of the month because usually the moon's out. And even with a 50-millimeter lens, you can get some interesting shots. Okay, again, select an interesting foreground and just exposure and f-stop to the phase of the moon. Obviously, you don't want to take a 30-second exposure. It just, you'll have to experiment that yourself, like a 1 second, and rather than wide open, you need to cut down the f-stop, f8 or something like that. Okay, this is the moon in Poodle Rock in the Valley of Fire. And here I am again down at Corona del Mar. This was the biggest full moon in 120 years, something like that. And so I thought that was an event. So I ran down there, and this is in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. The moon's actually setting. And I had to get wet on this one because I wanted the moon in a certain position. So I actually got wet up to my waist because the waves were coming in. But anyhow, sometimes that's what you have to do. Okay, here's a full moon rising. And, if you just look around for interesting locations, again, that's more than half the battle, so to speak. This is the full moon rising on September 10th, along with Mars there on the right-hand side. This was a fairly difficult photograph because the moon's very bright, obviously. And if I cut down the exposure so that the moon will be exposed correctly, just get a nice circular image of the moon, then I wouldn't see Mars, because I would have to cut down too much. So I wanted to get Mars in the image. Okay, so I had to basically overexpose on the moon, but it actually ended up being nice. The moon looks brilliant, looks like the sun, and so it worked out pretty good. I also had to have the lighting had to be pretty strong. I think I used a couple of flashlights, and I used my camera flash because I had to light up the rock. Otherwise, the rock would be all dark. So I had to play around with that one quite a bit. Review, basically people remember things in context, like the sun rising over the desert, or a full moon setting over the ocean, or a comet over a Joshua tree, or a falling star over a mountain ridge. Photographic style, as you can clearly see, my photographic style is to always include scenery. When you include scenery, you get the down-to-earth, man-in-the-desert view of the night sky that people can relate to, and they can see themselves there. Publishers often want just that. They want images of what the average person would see if they went out tonight and saw the meteor shower. Okay, getting your images before publishers. Again, you always need a plan. The celestial event that you want to shoot in advance, and then plan the location. Do whatever it takes to get the outstanding shot. Might mean long drives or long hours. And then once you get some good images, do something with it. Don't just put it in a drawer. But post them on the OCA website, or Astronomy Picture of the Day website is a great website. A lot of photo researchers, people that are looking for images for magazines or whatever, often go to the Astronomy Picture of the Day site. And so if you submit images, and they'll accept some. Also, having images available to publishers before the day of the celestial event, if that's possible. Like, for instance, if there's going to be a meteor shower, Perseid meteor shower next week, it'd be good if you had a image on hand of the Perseid meteor shower from last year that you can give them, and and so they could use it as for the so the public could see what a meteor shower looks like. Okay, so thanks for spending a night under the stars with me.
Thank you, Wally. Those are just truly inspirational photographs of a rare kind. It makes me want to get out there myself and try my hand at doing something similar. Just shows what you can do when you really put your mind to it. And remember, you can attend the next OCA meeting for yourself. The meetings are always free and open to the public. They're usually held on the second Friday of every month at 7:30 p.m. at Chapman University in Orange. Please do check our website for further details. Well, now that's the end of this show. But thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm Liam Kennedy with the Orange County Astronomers. Now, get out there and look up tonight.